Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Staltari, and I'm a genealogist and a passionate traveler. I started this channel to explore all kinds of different genealogy information, which I still do, but right now I'm knee deep in focusing on les filles du roi, les filles mariées. I made it my mission to do all of their biographies. I don't know how I got here, but right now we're on episode 120 of Les Filles Mariées, which is the concurrent series I began after The King's Daughters, and there are about 262 of them. I've often said that the Filles Mariées are really the founding grandmothers of Quebec. If the Filles du Roi are the founding mothers, then the Filles Mariées, because they came before, are truly the grandmothers of Quebec. And we are going to get to know their stories. But before we begin, let me show you ways you can support the channel. The first three keep you in the know: subscribe, like, and notify. And those are all so important for the algorithms. Now, I've set up with YouTube membership levels where we can have from 99 cents a month all the way to $24.99 a month. And we also have the I think it's a super thanks as well that you can do for each episode. And on my website, you have a PayPal button that you can donate to as well, either monthly or on a one-time only basis. I appreciate any and all of your support. You really are an amazing source of comfort and support for me as I go through all of these different ladies and do the research and all of that. So I really appreciate your support. And with that being said, let's get started and get to know our filles mariées of this episode. Today's episode of Les Filles Mariées, episode 120, Jeanne Rousselier. She comes to us from a viewer request. So let's get to know Jeanne a little bit better. Jeanne was born in 1636 in a commune called Moëse in France. Her parents were Louis Rousselier and Isabelle Paris. Now, Moëse is a small commune in the Charente-Maritime department, which is found inside of the region of Nouvelle-Aquitaine. It's known for its very rich history and natural beauty. Its name means marshy land, and it reflects the coastal wetlands, which have shaped both its past and its present. In the 17th century, Moëse had a strong Protestant presence. One of its noble figures, Élie No, fled persecution and later became a key figure in New York, helping to educate African Americans. Isn't that amazing how the connections of history are? Architecturally, the Église Saint-Pierre, which she would have been baptized in, was built in the 1400s, and the Croix Rousselier is a rare 16th century cross highlighting its historical significance. But Moëse's greatest treasure is its natural reserve, home to thousands of migratory birds. Once a salt production area, it is now a balanced and protected ecological site, balancing conservation with climate adaptation. This commune may be small, but its legacy in both religion and history and nature is extremely profound. We don't know if Jeanne's parents were alive, but we do know that in 1653 she embarked on a great adventure. She was part of La Grande Recrue de 1653, the Great Recruitment of 1653. By 1652 or 53, the governor decided that he needed to do something drastic in order to save Montreal. By then, there were only 50 inhabitants living in Montreal, and the colony was not going to thrive. So in one kind of a Hail Mary pass, he returned to France, and he convinced 100 recruits to come to Quebec, or Montreal precisely, and begin to colonize the area. And she was one of those brave souls, and you can see on the plaque here her very name. So that is just a wonderful, wonderful testament to Jeanne's bravery for coming aboard. There weren't that many women on that journey, and so she was one of them. Now, the groom that would show up and would select her, and she would select him, his name was Pierre Godin de Châtillon, and he was born in 1630 in Châtillon-sur-Seine, France. His parents were Claude Godin and Marie Bardin. Now, you can see that his D name refers to where he's from, so that is absolutely one of the reasons the D names are so important. It gives us a clue about something. In this case, it confirms where he's from. He is from the region of France known as Bourgogne-Franche-Comté. And his region, that's his region, the department inside of that is the Côte d'Or, and that's where he's from. Châtillon-sur-Seine has been a significant site for centuries. In the Bronze Age, it was home to the Celtic Vigrave, where a noblewoman was buried with one of the largest known bronze craters. In medieval times, Châtillon thrived as a major trade center, especially in wool and tapestries. However, it was divided between the Counts of Burgundy and the Bishops of Langres until Louis XIII unified it in 1638, just shortly after Pierre was born. The town faced turmoil during the wars of religion, suffering attacks and plague. Later, in 1814, it hosted the failed Congress of Châtillon, where Napoleon's envoys attempted peace talks with the Allies. Today, Châtillon is known for its St. Val's Church. This is the church that Pierre would have been baptized in. And the Musée du Pays Châtillonnais, which preserves its rich past. And this is a really, really kind of a slice of history in this particular commune. So absolutely tells us, kind of parallels the story of France in many respects. So absolutely a wonderful place to visit if this is your ancestry. We've seen this slide before. Yes, indeed. Pierre was also on that ship that Jeanne was on, Le Grand Recrue de 1653. And on the plaque, we find his name as well. So did they know each other? I don't know. I'm sure they were acquainted. It's only 100 people. It's not like, one of those cruise ships with thousands of people. So I suspect that they did at least meet. But they didn't get married right off the ship. The ship landed in Montreal in November of 1653. Let's see, how this story turns. By 1654, Pierre was granted land by Governor Maisonneuve himself, and in 1663, he signed up with the governor's military team that helped defend Montreal. He was all in. So Pierre and Jeanne would not marry until October of 1654, almost a year after they landed in Montreal. So it was obviously they both had their own paths to do. And she may have been working as an to Jeanne Mance or providing services of one kind or another. But certainly by October, their lives intertwined and they were married at Montreal. Let's talk a little bit about Montreal. This wonderful city that started off as Ville-Marie and would eventually become Montreal was, of course, started by the founder, Pierre de Chomedy, Sœur de Maisonneuve, and was essentially a missionary center that was started in 1642. The colony, as I've stated, did not thrive and do very well. In fact, the people of Quebec City and Trois-Rivières, which were, obviously well established, thought of Montreal as kind of a fool's errand, and they just couldn't understand why anyone would want to go and live on an island and basically be cut off, in their minds, cut off. Eventually, obviously, the very fact that it was an island proved to be its greatest strength. Just like another island city, New York, became, because of the fact that it could so easily be approached and entered into, that is one of its great strengths. Now, in the 1640s and 50s and 60s, it wasn't so great because you can also enter, the warriors, the Indians could also enter and attack on different levels. And that's exactly the problem that they had and why it was so challenging to have anyone live there. And eventually the treaties were signed and peace to some degree was achieved. But that was later. Now I want to show you, this is a kind of a map right here on the right. It really shows you. I love this map because it really illustrates it is an island. There it is. And then it's surrounded by other little islands as well. You need to know that about Montreal. But up on the upper left, we have Le Vieux Montréal, the old Montreal, that is absolutely there today. And you can walk the streets and you can absolutely feel the history that envelops you. And then we have Notre Dame Cathedral, what it looks like today, and then one of the illustrations of what it would have looked like in the 17th century. Now, this particular map on your upper right is a kind of a museum, depiction of what the fort of Ville-Marie would have looked like. I've also attached the link so you can have a look at that museum. And then, of course, we have the marvelous evening skyline of Montreal, which I just absolutely love all the time. And that is Montreal. Let's see. This is where they would settle first. Let's see what else happens. Now, Pierre was a master carpenter, and he was very much in demand in various places. So the family would move, and they moved from Montreal to Quebec City. Let's review a little bit about this extremely historic place. It is the capital of the province of Quebec, and 500,000 people live directly in Quebec City to this day. Quebec was originally named by the Algonquins, who named the area Quebec, K-E-B-E-C, which in their native language meant where the river narrows. And wouldn't you know it, Quebec City lies where the St. Lawrence River narrows. Samuel de Champlain founded the French settlement here in 1608 and called it Ville de Quebec. The city walls which surround it date back to this time period, making Quebec City the only area in North America with remaining city walls. There's so much to see in this incredible city, but one of the places that I like to kind of showcase is the Maison Jacquette. You can see it on the upper left of your screen, the little house with a red roof. And the Maison Jacquette is the oldest surviving private residence in Quebec. It dates from 1675. And it is home to a very famous restaurant called Aux Anciens Canadiens, which means to our old Canadians. Absolutely a touch of history. Now the next picture is of the Plains of Abraham. And Abraham l'Écossais, they called him Abraham Martin l'Écossais. And so the Plains of Abraham were where the British vanquished the French Canadians in 1759. This is the hill. Now, this particular land happened to belong 100 years prior to that Abraham Martin, and so that is why we call it the Plains of Abraham. But in case you know your ancestry, and in case you know if perhaps Abraham would be your great-grandfather, perhaps, and so then you could actually walk on your great-grandfather's land if you get to Quebec City. And the city walls that I talked about, here's an example of that. And then we have a kind of an AI-generated picture of what Quebec might have looked like at that time. And then on the bottom, we have the one of the oldest, if not the oldest, kind of shopping center or shopping area. It's called Le Petit Champlain, and it's said to be the oldest commercial district in North America. They would go on to have 9 children. Laurent would marry Acadian Anne Guérin and would have 9 children, 7 of whom would make it to adulthood. This family would indeed leave roots in Acadia. Laurent would later move back to Montreal and marry Marie-Anne Bournet and live out his life there. Marie would marry Vivian La Madeleine and have 4 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. Catherine would marry Louis Fortin and would have 5 children, 3 of whom would make it to adulthood. She would then marry Jean Neveu and have 5 children, 3 of whom would make it to adulthood. Gabrielle would marry André Angélique Jeanne de Robert and have 11 children, 10 of whom made it to adulthood. Madeleine would pass away in infancy. Marie-Madeleine would marry Acadian Robert Henry and would have 12 children, 10 of whom made it to adulthood.
Pierre would marry Jeanne Gauchon and would have 4 children, 2 of whom would make it to adulthood. Jean, we don't have any more information on. And Anne would marry Acadian Pierre Martin and would have 6 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. In the 1666 census, we find the family at Quebec City, and we have Pierre, Jeanne, Laurent, Marie, Catherine, Gabrielle, and Marie Magdalene is there as well as a 1-year-old child. So we find the family right up until Pierre. And that is the only census that the entire family is found in. So that's very precious to have. 72, a neighbor allegedly slapped their daughter Catherine, accusing her of stealing bread and other allegations. Jeanne apparently went to the neighbor house as well as her husband and one of her sons, and she was calling for his death. I can only imagine what kind of a scene it was. With all of that, by August of 1672, the neighbor agreed to pay all the costs. So we have to assume that this was definitely something that was not the family's fault. Sometime in between 1676 and 77, the family would move to Acadia, a very unusual move. They would move to Port Royal. And remember that Pierre's skill as a carpenter was very much in demand. And he may have wanted to just keep moving. And certainly the family's history was one of constant moving about and going where the work was, if you will. And so they would live there for the remainder of their lives to some extent. But as for Pierre, he would pass away sometime before the 1686 census. And because we have Jeanne in the Acadian 16 as the widow of Godin de Châtillon. Her children Gabrielle, Pierre, and Anne are listed with her. By 1693, we have the Acadian census that tells us that Jeanne has remarried to a man named Pierre Martin, who's 1 year older than her. He's 57 and she's 56. We know that Pierre Martin is actually the father of Pierre Martin, who married Jeanne's daughter Anne, and they are living with them. And we also have their grandchildren, Cécile, René, Madeleine, Etienne, 10 cattle, 8 sheep, 10 pigs, 12 arpents, 10 acres of land, and 1 gun. By 1701, 8 years later, Pierre and Jeanne are living on their own. Pierre has achieved the remarkable feat of aging only 3 years and now being 6 years younger than his wife. I love these things. And we presumably, after this period, is when they would have passed away shortly thereafter. They did not make it to any subsequent census. So this tells us that Jeanne and Pierre both probably passed away in that decade. She would leave us with a descendancy of 133 descendants as of 1729. Just remarkable, lady. Well, exhausted from telling the story. I mean, what a life! So both of them coming on that ship and being part of Le Grand Recrue, to the fact that they established themselves in Montreal, then they went to Quebec, then they had the legal issues. He kept on going, and then they finally said, "Yeah, let's go to Acadia." So there, the story takes another level. Just an amazing couple, really strong. I'm anxious to know how many of you are related to these individuals, because they truly are remarkable, remarkable. And I rarely have seen that movement. Normally, people generally during that time kind of settle down. These folks were all about the next adventure. Love the story. And we are so appreciative of Jeanne for being such a strong and incredible partner for her husband. And the fact, I mean, did you see, like, she was trying to defend her daughter? I mean, she was definitely not to be toyed with. So her bravery, her courage, her commitment to her family and to life itself
are just an astonishing thing and something really, really that is inspirational. So thank you, Jeanne, for coming to our shores. We bless your memory and are ever so thankful for you. And I am so thankful for my patrons, supporters, and subscribers. You really are an amazing bunch of people and love the subject matter and love your Quebec relationships. And I know that probably many of you are cousins to me, and so it feels like family. So thank you ever so much for your support. It really means a lot. And with that being said, I will see you on the next episode of Les Filles Mariées. Until then, au revoir.